Welcome to the Lara Jane Layton Show. This podcast is for you, the person who keeps putting others first. Your self-talk has held you back. You no longer need to take a second seat. Let's explore ways to overcome self-doubt. You can silence that inner bully voice and achieve your full potential. Here's your host, Lara Jane.
Hello, listener. It's your host, Lara Jane, and I am here with a new best friend, and her name is Melissa. And Melissa is here to help us learn how to trust ourselves. But she's also into human design, and we're probably going to sparkle that all the way through this podcast because I like to learn more about it whenever I have an expert on the line. So Melissa's bio and how to get a hold of her are in the show notes. So we're going to jump right in and turn the time over to Melissa so that we can get all this information on how to trust ourselves, because I sometimes don't trust myself and I can always learn more. So Melissa, help us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Laura. It means the world to me. Oh my gosh, I am so excited to be here and to dabble into all the things, especially on learning how to trust ourselves. And interestingly enough, the universe always is like talking to us. And actually today I was having a conversation with a family member, and she actually was talking to me about the doubts that she was having with something that she has going on with one of my cousins, which is cousin, so second cousin. So with her son, and she was talking about how she wasn't trusting herself and her intuition. And one of the most powerful things that I felt like I told her that I wanted to share with your audience was actually trust yourself to trust yourself. So that is something that we can even dive into right now.
Let's do it. I love this because, yeah, I can take a leap of faith, but I need to have trust that leap into trusting is going to work.
Yes.
And sometimes it takes a few tries before you start realizing it's real.
Exactly. It takes a few tries. It takes a few lessons. It takes a few wisdoms. It takes a little bit of everything in order for us to learn that we can trust ourselves. And one of the biggest things that has been shown to me in my life, especially now that I also have a small child, is that when we are born trusting ourselves. We are born with that innate trust. But what we have learned, especially if we dabble into human design, is that we are conditioned throughout our lifetime because of outside sources, right? So outside sources are telling us to do this, to be that, compromise this, compromise that, stay in this path or be in this box, et cetera, et cetera. So because of that, many times it takes away from the trust that we can hold and we can have for ourselves. So the more and more that this occurs in our lifetime, the less and less that we trust ourselves, right? So it was shown to me, like when I was in my mid-teens, that's what was going on, that I lost a lot of trust in myself just because of all the experiences that I had gone through. So what I needed to do before anything was to learn how to trust myself again. And because I actually was able to do that, now that I am at a stage where I'm a mom, I have a family, I have friends and I have relationships all over, and I'm connected and also hold my own business. I trust myself more than anything. And of course, there's going to be moments of doubt. There's going to be moments of questioning, but my fears of doubt and my fears of question no longer reign my life because I trust myself enough and I have courageous faith in me and in my own belief of what will occur and how and what will happen, to know that it's like I hold the answers and it's all right.
So I haven't gotten over the doubt, even though I trust myself and I take that leap every time. Sometimes it's a conversation in my head that goes,
yes,
is this really going to work? Is it not going to work? And just kind of that battle. And then it's like, remember, you can do this, go for it. And so have you been able to overcome that occasional doubt? And if so, how?
Yeah, to be honest, the doubt will always lie in human nature. Like we're humans, so we're going to feel ever evolving emotions. from the highest of emotions to the lowest vibrational emotions. And one of the things that I've learned through mindset energetics is that we can give those low vibrational energies our mind, or we can actually allow ourselves to actually feel them and be like, they're here, but they're no longer in the space of reigning in my mind. So for example, for you to be in that space of knowingness of you and being centered, to be like, I'm going to speak to myself and I'm going to tell myself, like, I got this, like I have this doubt, but I still got this. That means that right then and there, you're choosing yourself and you're choosing to have a higher vibrational emotion than to be allowed to keep continuing to doubt yourself, you know? And I actually still have doubts. Of course, I still have doubts. I still hold doubts. Like that's just human nature, but I no longer allow the doubt to be the one that chooses my path, you know? And I'm always like in that mindset of where I'm like, I got this, like, I know I can. And if there is a need of remembrance, then I'm going to do that remembrance for me. And in the end of the day, I'm possibly going to tell this story one day and being like, hey, I had this minute or this moment or this event where I doubted myself, but this is how I actually continued the path. And it's because of the knowingness that we hold for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So in that training process that you started out years ago, and now you have the much greater ability to trust yourself, were there some simple steps of, listen, just do? I mean, do you have a couple succinct steps that you kind of went through to get to where you're at?
Yes. And I love to work on this because I've actually had people ask me, like, do you ever get over this? Like, how did you even start this, this process of trusting yourself? How did you do it? And for me, it was about learning my human design. That was a big one for me that really allowed me to trust myself more, because I always had felt that there was a calling for my intuition. And I was always had a feeling that I always wanted to connect back to myself and back to my roots and back to my anchoredness, but I didn't know how that looked like or how that was. But even before I discovered human design, what I did was I actually began to really take out all the fears that I had, right? Like all the emotions that I was feeling when I was in doubt of myself. Like during those times, I was I was 17, 18 years old. And it was like a moment in time that there was a lot of doubt. There was I was finishing high school. I was going into college. There was a lot of things that I was doubting of what career was I going to do, what I was going to study, how was I going to study, where I was going to study. There were so many things that I didn't know how I could trust myself through this process. And what I did and what I started, I began to learn how to center myself. So that's actually where I began to work on meditation, work on actually allowing all these fears and beliefs that I had in my mind and doubts go into paper. So I actually started writing a lot of the fears that I had. I started writing a lot of the doubts that I had of myself and what I was really scared of. I was really scared, to take the leap to go into university, not knowing what the heck I wanted to do, right? That is such a big pivotal path that you're taking. And it's if I mess this up, what will happen? What will occur, right? And I had during that time, so I started doing meditation, and I remember, and I did this journey. Usually some of us don't find it until we're a lot older. But for me, I was grateful enough that I found it when I was younger. So when I did, I started doing meditation. I started focusing a little bit more on my inner thoughts, what they meant, and why I wanted to even know how to trust myself. And for a lot of it was because I didn't want to be wishy-washy with my feelings or emotions. I wanted to be certain. I wanted to be more clear. And I knew that, especially throughout high school, I noticed that I wasn't because I was so scared and I was so in my mind of being in doubt, so there lied a lot of anxiety. There lied a lot of kind of hiding myself, hiding my truth, you know, and there was a lot of compromising that I did of my being, of who I was, because of all these doubts and because I couldn't trust myself. So I saw what happened because I didn't trust myself. So I decided to make the decision. What if I actually took the path of trusting myself? How would my life look like, you know?
Yeah, I love that because, growing up, our whole parents' process is domesticate us, make us fit in, make us be like everybody else, make it so we're liked and not kicked out of the pack and thrown away for death. So they have this amazing mission to keep us safe. And one of those things is to get us to fit in so you're safe. And so you've got these thousands of external voices coming at you that say, you must be like this. You must be like this. To be liked and to be safe, you must be like this. And you are one voice. You are one voice in the sea of thousands. And to make your own voice loud enough that you trust it and hear it is a little bit frightening at first.
It is.
So we need to take just a quick break and have a word from our sponsor. But when we come back, I want to talk about how we take that one voice and make it loud enough that we hear it clearly in the sea of the thousands of voices that are coming at us. So be right back.
This podcast is sponsored by Lara Jane Coaching. You know you're ready to silence your inner bully voice? Let Lara Jane support you with coaching. To schedule an introduction call, go to larajanelayton.com.
Thank you. I'm so excited. Okay, so we're going to figure out how to pay attention to the most important voice, which is our own. So, Melissa, what kind of tips do you have to help us not tune out, but lower the volume on all those external voices and start hearing our own?
Yes, to tune into you, right? To tune into you, to be connected to you, to be anchored in you. And something that I actually spoke about recently was embracing ourselves whole. And it's about the life where you actually are choosing yourself. So when you are choosing yourself, it's unconventional, right? It's unconventional to choose yourself and to say yes to yourself, to say no to the doubts, to say no to everyone else's voice, and to say yes to you. There holds a deep fear that what you're doing and the voice that you are now hearing to or tuning into, that it's your own. What if that voice is wrong, right? But we keep on seeing outside of us so much madness, right? So much chaos because others have listened to what others are saying. So what would happen if we actually began to listen to our own, right? And when I began to listen to my own voice, when I began to actually see myself, when I allowed myself to embrace myself whole, to choose me, I finally decided that I still was going to have the doubts, that I was going to have them front row and center, but they were no longer going to lead my oneness, my truth, my knowing of me, right? So what I began to really focus on was like, okay, what are the doubts that I have with this current situation in my life, right? And what are the fears that I hold for myself? Like, what are they? And when I began to ask myself why and what they were, I started to see them as they were. They're just, doubts and fears. But what if I actually allowed myself to have the courage to see me in another way and to actually choose me during this time where there's so many voices out there saying so many things. And during that time, it was actually a time where I was going through, again, going to school, going to college, but at the same time, I was dealing with a lot of inner chaos where it was around my eating disorder tendencies. And I had a lot of eating disorder tendencies for the years that I was in high school. And I was very obsessed over exercising. Like there was like endless hours that I could do of exercising. And a lot of what took my mind space was actually thinking about food and thinking about exercise. And it was because I listened to the other voices. It was because they told me that I had to do this and I had to do that in order to be this and in order to be that. But what if I actually chose myself and I just wanted to be me? Like, how would that look like? Right? Because I already saw how my life looked like when I paid attention to what others were saying and what the sea of everyone was saying. But what if I actually was in the arena of choosing myself? How would that look like? So I began doing that, and it was it's a long process, right? Because I'm almost 30 now. So I am in a space where actually I no longer see exercise as punish or see it as a way to, decrease body weight, but actually increase my life, increase my longevity. But it took a lot of years for me to still have the doubts, for me to still have the fears, but to lead with courageous faith, to lead with myself, because I knew that it was my time to trust myself more, So it actually began with a lot of that, to allow myself to just even open up, to embrace myself as I was at that time. So I actually can trust myself more and then begin my life again.
I like that. And I also think Byron Katie, are you familiar with her? She's the author. Anyway, one of the things that she teaches is when we have that doubt, to ask ourselves, is that true?
That is so powerful.
Is that really true? And I think about that because sometimes our doubt is filling us full of all the untruths. And it's like, oh, my mother doesn't love me. Is that really true? If that was true, what would that mean? And start really questioning it with a process to, if that meant that my mother didn't love me, that would mean I was motherless. If I was motherless, would that mean I wasn't loved? Is that really true? And like just boiling it really down to, where is that actual pain coming from?
Yes.
And allowing yourself to know the truth. Because if we don't question what is true and what isn't truth, we don't know. But that questioning process, the universe always comes shining through and just really helps you, whether you call it source or universe or inspiration or intuition or whatever you call it. It's all, or the word of God, it's all that same feeling of that thing that I should trust is supporting what I am feeling like I should do. So it's time to do it.
Yes. And that's so magical, right? Because that right there is already speaking in the space of like emotional intelligence, right? Where we have that emotional intelligence, where we get to actually see and be like, there will be the doubts and there will be fears. And then asking yourself, like, are these fears true? Is this what I'm feeling? Where is it coming from? From what space is this coming from? Is this a space of, my truth, or is this a space that, it's someone else's truth? And this is why it's so important to know ourselves, but most importantly, to trust ourselves, so we can trust our own voice. We can trust our own way, our own path, and no longer be tied to living life how others had been doing it, but the way that we want to discover life ourselves.
Yes. And I want to jump right back to that thing where you said we need to know ourselves. Yes. Which now brings us right into that human design I wanted to sprinkle in here. So I only learned about human design maybe a year ago. And when I got my chart, and it's based a lot like astrology, where you have to have your birth date and your location and the time of birth. And it comes back with this magical thing. And you look at the chart at first, you go, this is weird. Like, I don't know how to read this. But as you get into it, it starts making sense. And I started understanding why people thought I was stubborn. I started understanding why I was very hard to be influenced by other people. And you go, oh, okay, that's one of my gifts, is to be able to stand up and be authentic in the sea of all these weird voices.
Yes.
So for me, it was this aha moment. So talk to us about understanding ourselves and how human design can help us at least appreciate who we are.
Yes, of course. Yeah. So human design has been a pivotal change for me because it no longer was about just me being an astrological sign, a Pisces. Like that's a Pisces. But a lot of the things that actually are said of Pisces, because I'm a Pisces, for example, I look at them and I'm like, that's not me. That's not who I am. So I don't identify with being a Pisces so much. So, right. always reading like the astrological signs never felt like it was the thing for me, even though so many people identified with it.
Yep.
So when I actually found something that I'm more into and more able to identify myself with, I was like, oh my goodness, yes, this makes so much more sense, right? So I actually started diving into human design when I was pregnant. And when I discovered that I was having my son, it was almost 5 years ago. He's going to be 4 soon. Oh my gosh. But when I was in that process, I really wanted to be in that space of knowing myself, especially not only knowing myself, but knowing myself more to the point that I can actually also trust myself, because now I'm bringing a new human into the world. And it's like, I know right then and there, a lot of the fears and a lot of the doubts are really like highlighted, right? There's a lot of what we call like mom guilt and, mom shaming, like all of these other things. And I really wanted to be in the space that I could support someone in this earth to, be themselves fully and for them to feel safe to be who they are in the world. So I couldn't do that without knowing myself more, right?
Right.
So that's actually where I dove into human design. So I've been into human design almost 5 years now. I learned so much from that point. I remember getting a reading and I was like, wow. Like I just remember re-listening. And I like crying because I was like, this is, a lot of what I knew of myself, but I didn't know of myself, right? Like when you know something deep within you, but there was like a remembrance finally from somebody, like somebody's like reading you in your chart and you're just like, what? This is a huge remembrance that I knew already in my heart, so
it was just hiding because it was told to be something else.
Yeah. Well, again, in the sea of everyone, we were told, because again, survival, safety, stay in your lane. So when I finally was, highlighted so much of who I am, I was like, okay, now it's time to embrace more of it so I can be more for the world, so then others can also be more for themselves, and I've always been about this space of influencing people in the best way for them, not for me, not influencing others for my own benefit, but there's nothing that fuels me more than to support others so they can be more of who they are. And I've known that since I was a personal trainer. I've known that since I work with others in the private investigation process. I've known that since I worked with biotech companies. Like I've known that with all the work that I've done, tutoring, everything. So I knew that that's what I really wanted to dive into. So when I found out I was a 3/6 manifesting generator, I was like, this makes so much common sense to me. Like this is my anchor, right? So I actually began to feel more anchored with me. And the more I dove into my own design, the more I saw my gifts and the more that I saw them highlighted. So then finally I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. And I felt the yes to, again, choose myself and trust myself more with the gifts that I had. Like now they were right then, they're front and center. And it was on me to make the choice of what I was going to do with them. Was I continue to not craft them and not make them more me and more like define them and redefine them for myself and to own them unapologetically? Or was I just going to continue, like just keeping them aside? And I decided that I wanted to make them shinier and brighter and, sparkle it with everything that I do. And because of that, I also now get to support others doing all of that. So it's really powerful.
And it's so fun to watch our journeys, and
Yes.
to listen to the aha moments of when, you kind of, like we said, we're raised to act and be a certain way. And as you start getting that breath of you, once you become an adult and you're on your own, you go, that felt good,
Yes.
And, you were talking and I'm thinking, sometimes people think owning your own power is egotistic and it's arrogant. And why would I want to do that? But when you think somebody else is less than for the way they are, you become arrogant. You think you are the only one that is right, you become arrogant.
Exactly.
But when you know you're in your path and everybody else is on their path and you accept all of them, you're not. And you can be authentic and you can be unique and you don't have to cater and bow down to others' expectations. And so I just, I thought about that when you were saying it was like, it kind of started going like, oh, maybe I'm being egotistical, but egotistical requires you to look down on somebody else.
That's very powerful. That's so powerful because when I actually speak a lot to my community, to my clients, I speak to them in the sense of being more for yourself. So instead of giving in what you said, like less, right? Looking down on someone, giving them less, you're actually giving more to the world because you're actually allowing yourself to fully be you. And you also know you. So now you're seeing also where you are conditioned. Like that's one of the big, powerful things of human design. Because like, for example, for the astrological sense, again, I never really was seeing myself in that just because there's so much that I was like, no, this doesn't seem like this is me. So I don't subscribe to this. But when I actually saw it with human design and that it's catered to you, right? You have your own chart. You have your gifts right then and there showing, and you also are seeing where you're conditioned, where there might be some triggers, right? It doesn't mean that they're for everyone at that time, but there possibly could have been like you can see right then and there. Like, for example, for me, one of my biggest things was that I always felt that I needed to change the answer to the things that I was responding to. So for example, if someone asked me a question, I would have a hard time saying yes or no. And it was because I was doubting what they would think of me when I actually answered the question, instead of being very present with my yes or with my no. And for example, I wouldn't follow what I felt in my sacral, in my being, what they would ask me something and it felt like a no, I'd be like, and then I question it. And then I question myself why it was a no. So then I would say yes, but not because I wanted to, but because they were asking me to say it, Mm-hmm. So when I actually found this out for myself, and I found this out that I was doing it in the sense of because I was conditioned in the world to, be into what they wanted to do or XYZ. But then I saw in human design that I got to follow my yeses and I got to follow my nos, because the more that I follow my yeses, the more satisfied I am in this world, which is our like highest vibrancy as a manifesting generator. And if I follow the nos to be a yes, and then I'm doubting myself, I don't trust myself, I hold the fear, then I'm taking actually away from my energy, and I'm going to what they call frustration, which is like the lowest vibrancy that you can feel in the manifesting generator, as a manifesting generator. So I was like, I understand now when I feel like it's a no in my mind. And obviously then it goes into crap. It used to like unfold, and I was like, I knew that was going to happen. And then I would be like, oh, I knew it. And I didn't trust myself to say no,
Yes.
So when I actually learned and I saw that, and I was like, wow, okay. So the pulls that I get within me, I actually correct. Like I was always right. And now when it's a no, it's a no. And it's like, nope, that doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. So I don't do it. If it's a fuck no, it's a fuck no. And that's it.
I agree. And one of the things that you're talking about is you're saying the word manifesting generator. And if for those people or person that is listening that doesn't understand what that means, that would be like saying you're a Leo or a Pisces or a whatever. Yes. It's just a category that they put you in. Yes. And then I also want to step back and say, astrology is not a farce either. So many of us only see the surface of it. And all we know is that we are whatever that month was. But to have your full chart done and a full chart reading does give you a lot more information of why you don't feel like a Pisces or why I don't feel like a Leo. I have a sister that's a Leo. We are totally opposites. How could this even be? Well, because we haven't done the full chart. You're only looking at your sun sign. So I wanted to give just a little bit. I am not dishing astrology.
Not at all. Neither was I.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that, a lot of us have only seen it as a very superficial, this is the day I was born and that's it for our sun sign.
Yes. Thank you so much for saying that, because that is actually why I wasn't tapped into it, because I didn't know. I only knew the month that I was born. So a lot of the categories, like, for example, if I follow like zodiac signs and everything online, they actually don't resonate with me so much. Like, for what I've seen is that like, we're so emotional, like as Pisces, and I agree. But then they a lot of times talk about Pisces being very wishy-washy, and that's not me. So a lot of the things, again, that I kept reading throughout the stage that I was living in my lifetime as a teenager, I remember reading like 17 magazine and everything and looking at all of these astrological paths. And I was like, what are they talking about? Like, this has nothing to do with me. But it was because I also didn't know my rising and my
all the other signs that are in there. My moons. We only were looking at the sun sign. So
exactly. So I didn't know all of it. But then that's why I wasn't as tapped into myself, and I didn't really know a lot of it because I didn't really follow with it as much. And I feel like when we find something else that can support us to trust ourselves more, that could be very powerful, right? And it doesn't mean that this tool is going to be something that you will maybe subscribe to all your life. Like, I've learned in my own path that I love human design, but not to the point that I'm going to do everything in the human design space. Like, I also am dabbling to other things, doing other things, and just focusing always on me in that perspective. But it is a very supportive tool. It's not the only tool that we get to have. We get to have this tool and so many others as well.
Yes. So we are out of time. It's like, how could this much time be over already? This is too much fun.
Yes.
But I want to make sure that we've been very clear on this, that our initial thing was, how do we learn to trust ourselves? And then a little bit of human design. Okay, a lot. But I think once we understand ourselves, whether it's through your full astrological chart, a palm reading, or just praying and meditation, or whatever you do, when you understand yourself and you become authentic, you start trusting yourself. And these other tools that are out there are to support you in learning who you are, so that you can gain that trust. And so what I love to end with the last words of wisdom that you would like to make sure our listener hears and can use to be incorporated into life. And then I also want you to give us the information on that human design book so that we can put it in the show notes. Because I think it's a great, at least open your mind to it. It doesn't have to be what you do, but at least, not you, but listener, but open your mind and see if it's something that can help you understand you. So, last minute words of wisdom.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So thank you for the space. And it's been my treat to be here. And what I would love to say is that you know yourself more than anybody, right? There's no one like you. The most longest loving relationship you can have is with you. So live the life that you desire to live, be who you desire to be unapologetically by trusting yourself more and more and more. And do this through the process of choosing you, through remembering who you are. And if you've forgotten along the way, you can always come back to that remembrance of you, to your truth, to your oneness, to who you are in the path. And it could be through supportive tools. It can be through meditation. It doesn't matter what you choose to do it with, but just know that there is a way for you to know yourself, to trust yourself, to own yourself more, and live the life that you desire to live.
I love it. I love all these like-minded people that I keep running into. It's just a blessing to have this voice.
Yes.
With people, because there are so many people out there looking and seeking for better understanding, and the variety. Just because looking through the glass window worked for me doesn't mean that looking through a different window won't work for somebody else. So I love all the guests that come in with this amazing wisdom that one person can't have. So thank you so much, Melissa, for expanding our horizons and helping us to see how we can learn to trust ourselves. And listener, Melissa and I are not medical or mental professionals. We are here for entertainment purposes. Women that have been through crap and made it through and want to share the secret sauce to getting through the gates.
Yes,
how we can overcome some of this stuff. So thank you so much. And listeners, stay tuned for the next episode.
Thank you so much.
Are you tired of waking up exhausted? You are not alone. If you're looking to take your life back, let's start with the simple step of adjusting your self-talk. Stay tuned for the next episode with your host, Lara Jane. Remember to follow the show so you don't miss a next simple step that you can use to feel more confident. And please leave an honest review.